What if I told you the number one center in college football has only started 6 games in college football? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Draft Yoda here, where we're data driven and prospect focused. Today, we're breaking down Notre Dame center Joe Otting, currently carrying an 8.95 out of 10, making him my number 51 overall prospect going into this college football season. And trust me, I know it's a bold ranking because he's not got 3 years of starting tape. He's not a center with 30 career starts. This is not a polished product, not polished product where the NFL projection is already completely clean. He has 6 starts. But I think when we're done with this, you're going to agree with me that Joe Otting is center number one. Before we get into it, though, let's make sure we hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and make sure you hit the bell to keep yourself notified. That way you won't lose track of any other prospects that we do going into the college football season and all the way through next year's draft. Joe started in Topeka, Kansas, little place called Hayden Catholic High School. Multi-sport athlete, and you know how much I love multi-sport athletes, especially when it comes to offensive linemen. Also played 2 ways on the offensive line. Kansas State Central Offensive Lineman of the Year honors. Made a deep playoff run. Qualified for state in the 4A state shot put. Also was ranked regionally in discus and javelin. And played basketball, of all things. Averaged 14 points and 7 rebounds a game. That's not bad. Boy's got athletic chops, man. For center, it's not just about being big. It's about balance, coordination, body control, explosiveness, short area movement, being able to redirect, being able to climb, and being able to play in space. And when you see a lineman with football, basketball, and throwing event background, usually tells you that they have some functional athletic ability there. Coming out of high school, he was a 4-star recruit. I think he was number 29 in the offensive lineman nationally in his class. And that's a strong profile. Not a random unknown walk-on. Notre Dame recruited him because they saw a player with movement skills, toughness, development, upside, and tools to eventually become a starter inside. And when you talk about, Notre Dame offensive linemen, the program matters. Notre Dame's one of the strongest offensive line development reputations in college football. It's a true NFL pipeline. So when NFL center prospects start flashing, I pay attention. He redshirted his first year. That's important because, part of Notre Dame's offensive line unit, they were a Joe Moore Award semifinalists. You're learning from a strong room, participating against real, practicing against real talent, developing the body, and learning, the center position well. Saw limited action in 2024, across 7 games. Most of that coming in blowouts. 2025 was still mostly just a projection for him. We knew the pedigree, the movement profile, and Notre Dame liked him. 2025 started as starting center Ashton Craig went down with season-ending knee injury, which opened the door for Otting. And that's where the evaluation really begins for him. Is because stepping into the lineup at center in the middle of the season is not easy. It's not just another offensive line spot. The center has to communicate, has to identify fronts, has to handle protection, has to snap the ball cleanly, and immediately block. Center has to work combo blocks. He has to be tied to the quarterback, and he has to be tied to both guards. And you can't hide a center. I can hide a guard. I can hide a tackle. truly, but you can't hide a center. And to be thrown into that role against USC, it's not a soft landing. That is coming out the gate and understanding it's a big game. USC Notre Dame's always a big game. And his first career start, Notre Dame immediately rushed for 306 yards. That's a statement. No rushing total belongs on one player. I understand that. It's a total offensive line thing. Takes the backs, the tight ends, play calling, everything, But when a center steps into the lineup and the run game immediately hits that level, you pay attention as it tells you the operation didn't fall apart. The communication held strong. The movement was there. The interior run game functioned well. And it showed that Otting was ready for that moment. Across his 6 starts, Otting allowed 4 hurries, no sacks, no hits, just 4 hurries. That's outstanding for a young center stepping into a lineup mid-season. Pass protection at the center position is very difficult. It's very different because you're dealing with nose tackles, you're dealing with linebackers, you're dealing with twists, you're dealing with late movement, and you're dealing with the communication and having to communicate the pressure before the snap and deal with the physical pressure after it. For Otting to step in and keep the pass protection file as clean as it was is a major point in his favor. It shows awareness, balance, and the ability to recover. And that's one of the things that stands out with him. When you're watching the tape, is the movement. Some of the best time movement among the centers in this class. That matters because the modern center has to move. You're not just a phone booth blocker anymore. Centers often pull. Centers have to climb. They need centers who can reach. You need to be able to get out in space and block. It's incredibly helpful when the center can work out into screens, can help with outside zones, can redirect and handle athletes. And Otting has that ability. He's a genuine puller and climber. And Notre Dame has asked him to get out of his stance, work laterally, and climb into the second level, and he looked comfortable doing so. Pulling and climbing truly is what separates him. A lot of centers can survive straight ahead. A lot of centers can snap and anchor, but the centers who create value in today's NFL are the ones who can expand the run game. If your center can pull, it changes angles. If your center can climb, you get bodies on linebackers. If your center can move in space, you can run a more diverse offense. And Otting gives you that. He's not just catching contact. He can work to landmarks. He can find second level targets. And he can stay balanced while moving. And that movement profile is why I think the ceiling is higher than the current body of work that we've seen for him. The athletic foundation is something I wanted to make sure I touched on. The basketball background, the track and field background, his movement testing, all that is wonderful. And then he came to Notre Dame, and Notre Dame has a history of developing players. And it shows up in a player who moves better than most centers. It gives him a different ceiling. You're not just hoping he becomes a solid inside blocker. You're hoping he becomes the center who can change what you call in the run game. That matters. Go back to the Eagles when they had Kelsey at center. Him being able to pull changed the blocking scheme and really changed the numbers on the offensive run game for them. And you saw how dominant that helped. Otting can pull, he can climb, and he can work in space. Nobody's perfect, you know. I've said in every single one, nobody's absolutely perfect. Never will be. My first concern is the sample size. 6 career starts is not a full evaluation. It's why I want to see 2026. I want to see him come through healthy. And I want to see him, expand on some of the things I've seen before. If 6 games is a good audition, but we need more tape. We need more opponents. We need more games against, different fronts. I just need to see I need more tape to really get the best feeling for him. There is a slight concern in run blocking with Joe Otting. The rushing totals were excellent. 306 yards against USC, 329 against Syracuse. Offense had multiple games where the offensive line didn't allow a sack. But when you isolate Otting individually for run blocking tape, it's still more modest than the team total suggests. It's important. Team rushing production can make an offensive lineman look better than they are individually. A great back can erase missed blocks. Great scheme can create angles. So with Otting, we have to separate the results from the individual rep. The movement is real, the ability is real, but the down-to-down run blocking dominance still has a place to grow. There was a couple times when you watch his tape, especially the Stanford game. The Stanford game is his thinnest tape. It matters because it reminds us the evaluation isn't perfect. He's a young lineman with variance. But when you only have 6 games, one weaker game stands out more. The technique he had in that game wasn't the best. It was still showing developmental needs. A little bit more consistency with hand placement, consistency with leverage, consistency sustaining his block, and consistency with the matchups that are more physical. And that's why I want more tape. That's why we need more tape on him. He also, another concern, and it's a small one, is how he anchors against nose tackles. He's still relatively untested at his current weight and size. And movement centers are great, but if you have to block a 330-pound nose tackle who wants to walk you back into the quarterback, can you survive that bull rush? Can you avoid getting compressed? And Otting has shown good protection instincts, but the heavier power sample is still small. And that's, one of the things I want to see in 2026. It comes back to the main point of what I want to see in 2026. I want to see more tape. Gotta see more tape. But why is he center number 1? This center group is not loaded with finished products. And Otting has the best athletic foundation and the best movement of the group. And that's what puts him at number 1 for centers. It's why the first center popped up at 51 overall. It's not going to be a high level group. There is going to be a cluster of them for centers. And that's not bad, but it's not great. There's going to be one of these centers. I think it's a five person cluster of centers that there's going to be a center that separates themselves. Joe Otting, to me, has the best chance to do so with his athletic profile. But I need to see more in 2026. 2026 is about opportunity and proof for him. He gets the job, becomes one of the biggest risers in the entire interior offensive line class. There's a checklist he needs to hit. I need a full season of starting. Has to happen. He has to keep the protection. He has to keep the protection clean. show better individual run blocking power, handle a couple heavier nose tackles, and clean up some of the technical variants that you saw. And then he secures center number one easily. You know, the snaps are limited. And if they stay limited, his evaluation will have to wait another year. That's just the reality. But if he can come out and show good snaps, can move, can protect, and can operate Notre Dame's, offense, he's going to be called upon in the draft next season. Have him at an 8.95 out of 10, making him my 51st overall player and center number one. He has development that he needs. We need more tape, but he is the modern center starter kit with movement, processing, protection, and athleticism. And with more tape, he could be the new standard for centers. That's how high I think he can go. But that's my board. It's what I think about Joe Otting. Tell me what you think about him. Is he center number one? Is there somebody else? How high would you put him in this draft class? Is he 51st? Is he higher? Is he lower? Let's talk about it down in the comments. If you like these evaluations, please make sure you follow us. Our goal is to have 100 before the college football season kicks off. As always, I'm Draft Yoda, Bill Workman, your favorite draft nerd's favorite draft nerd, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.